Okay, man. Easy, we're live, bro. We're live. You're muted. It's just me. They got a red beard, dude. They got a red beard. That's it.
Yep.
You're back, though.
I am back.
I'm going to try and bit.ly this URL real quick. bit.ly. I think my bit.ly account's all screwed up, though. I think it uses a different domain. Okay, everyone. We gave you the wrong thing to the Hangout. We did. It's not something that we're proud of. It is, regardless, it is something that we did. So yeah, unfortunately. Let me see if I can go to this video and comment on there. Oh yeah, dude. Let me say something. Go here to join the bloody Hangout. There you go. I shared it on the YouTube, on the live stream. We got 25 people watching.
Nice.
Yes, so some people are like, yeah, I'm here. They can go ahead and join the chat now. Yeah. All right. So we don't have anyone in. So, Imzi, do you... Oh, wait, we got Mohammed. We got Romy. Romy, what's up, Romy?
I'm Jeff.
But Jeff. Okay, so how this is going to work is when you ask your question, if you're done and you want to just listen, we're going to ask you to jump out and go back to the YouTube stream because there's only a certain amount of rooms available in here. So if you're in here, it's because you're going to ask a question. And if you're not going to ask a question, go ahead and just head back over to YouTube. So do you want to just give some basics, though, Joe?
Yeah.
It's like something that people are going to be like, maybe answer everyone's questions up front.
Right. Yeah, so like the basic, some basic information that we want people to have when submitting to the CFP is what we're looking for and the kind of talks that are more likely to get approved and get selected, right? And there's not necessarily a simple answer to that, but there's definitely a few things you can keep in mind that will help out a lot when submitting. So one is that we, as the organizers of ng-conf, like ng-conf to have a lot of flavor, right? So we want really high quality technical talks, but we like them to have personality. So we want you to have your personality in your talks. And we want to see that. Probably the most important thing that you can do is your title, because that's your very first step.
Yeah.
Is the title, right? You got to have a title that sounds good. It doesn't mean that the title has to be the most clever thing you've ever invented in the world, but it should either very clearly communicate what your talk is about, or have so much personality that people would say, I have no idea, I may or may not have any idea what this talk is about, but I really want to see it. Hopefully it can do both. It can be so interesting and communicate the purpose of the talk. But the title is a very important thing. I mean, if you're going to spend time on your talk, you should spend at least 10 to 20% of the time just brainstorming good talk titles, right?
Yeah. Another, and I want you to, let me explain kind of how the process is going to go so you can understand the importance of the title. We get together, and so that it's all fresh on our minds, we don't leave the room until we pick all the talks. So we sit there for one night and we go hard. We just drive all the way through it. So the math around it is if we spent 1 minute talking about every single talk, that right there is going to take us how many hours, Joe? Like
just over 3. Yeah, 3.
Yeah, it's going to take us just over 3 hours just to read and give everyone 60 seconds of our time to consider your talk. So that's just the round one, like that we go through. Then we go back through and do several rounds of pruning and whittling it down till we get the right talk. So you basically worst case scenario, you've got 60 seconds of our time, and that's what's going to get you back to that next round. Does that make sense? And a lot of that's heavy on your title. So that's what Joe's saying is you should spend a lot of time and have some serious pride on that title because it does matter. It does matter to us. Picking.
Hey.
Kip's here.
Hey, guys.
All right, man. We're online. We're on air. So yeah. So so we're there for about 8, maybe 9 hours from the time that we start to the time we end. It's pretty tough. Our families are understanding about it every year, but this year won't be any exception. We'll be there for, half of a day, longer than a work day, picking talks. And so that's how it will go if you have any questions about how that's going to work this year.
I think we could even delve in a little bit deeper about that. We do look at talk descriptions, right? We're not just reading titles, but oftentimes the talk description, if we have to go to the talk description to either say, what the heck is this even about? Or to understand why does the title look so boring and so uninteresting and so irrelevant that we have to check the talk description to see, is there really any relevance in this? Or is the talk description really confusing and misleading? And when I say confusing, I don't mean like, hey, there's the confusing where it's so interesting and crazy, you're not necessarily sure exactly what it's about, but it sounds interesting. And then there's it's just confusing. I can't really tell what this talk is about. And it's not interesting. What's that?
Kip?
Did you have something, Kip?
Kip?
Yeah, I found it. Thank you.
All right. So anyway,
is Kip watching
we
the
will
YouTube?
look here.
That why he's delayed?
Sorry?
Are you watching the YouTube? Is that why you're delayed?
No, he's in the Hangout with us. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in here.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's true. Okay, cool.
So anyway, your title is very important. Number one thing, get a good title. Spend plenty of time, create a bunch of ideas, send them to friends, have them tell you what they think is the best title. Look at previous
and
talks.
I'll say this: a lot of people, they think that they need to have the whole talk planned out before they submit. This is a tip I would give you. You need to have an idea of what you would present. Okay, you need to know conceptually the thing you would talk about. But other than a title and a description, you don't need to have slides already. You don't need to have working examples on GitHub of what you're going to talk about. You need to have a concept, basically. And if we pick it, then you get to spend a couple months, honing in and solidifying that talk. But feel free to get involved and submit as many talk titles as you want because you don't actually have to have the talk ready is what I'm saying, man. So submit, if you have 3 or 4 crazy ideas, submit all 3 or 4 of them.
And that's also a good indication of the kinds of work that you can do that aren't going to help you. So if you feel like, it's going to be more impressive if I put together a sample project showing what my talk's going to be about, the code's all ready, and I have slides done, we're not going to look at the sample project. Most likely, we're not going to look at the slides, right? If you link to them on YouTube, we're looking at the talk title, the description, and then to a lesser extent, your background, right? Who you are, what you present.
And again, when you think about it taking us 8 or 9 hours to get through all the talks, that first round you really do get about 60 seconds, and so we don't have time. If everyone gave us a repo and had us go check out the project and look at everything, you're talking 5 or 6 minutes per talk. That would take us a full-time job, a week maybe. And so that first round through, you're going to get about 60 seconds where we get to no. So your talk title is really important and your description is equally as important.
Right. Yeah. So
sorry.
Go ahead, Kip.
I was going to just throw out a couple things. I think it's very important to pick a topic you're passionate about because we're going to feel that. Everything, your description, your title, if you're passionate about it, we're going to be able to tell. I would run it by some friends, proofread it, make sure it makes sense, that also that people in the community also are going to be interested in it. I want to say be careful not to limit the audience of your talk. I mean, niches are okay, but there's a danger there. The talks that that everybody's going to be interested in, unless you just have an amazing talk, you know, are going to be more often picked. So.
Yeah, so let's talk about talk subject, right? The subject of your talk is going to make a big difference to improve or reduce the chances that you get through. So things that will reduce your chances. We can only fit a couple of soft skills type talks into the conference. So already, if you're going to submit a soft skills, you're probably going to have a lot tighter competition than you are if you're going to submit a technical talk. We need them, and we really need good ones, but just keep that in mind that we can't have 10 or 15 soft skills talks. We can have 2 or 3. So soft skills to be pretty tight on those. For technical talks, talks that are very niche, we almost universally, without taking much look at them, reject any talks that are about Angular plus this very specific backend, like say Angular plus Rails.
Or Angular plus Node, Angular
Right.
plus .NET. Those
Whatever
are the
it
ones
is.
we get a lot of because people are passionate about it. And the problem is that might only apply to like 20% of the audience.
And we're single track, right? People can't say, oh, I'm a .NETer, I'm going to go to this talk, right? We have to have the talks that are there for everybody. So instead, it doesn't mean that Angular plus some other technology is a talk that would get rejected, but it needs to be much more universally applicable than Angular plus a specific backend. You know, so talks on, for example, like different types of API connectivity, Relay, for example, things like that don't apply to just a subset that could apply to the general public. Those types of things would have a better chance of getting through. So,
and I think that we're bringing this up because we get a lot of those. That's why we're bringing it up. We get a lot of that. A lot of people say, I want to talk about Angular plus insert your favorite backend here. And we're not disappointed people are submitting those. It is just super, super common, and they're all so disparate that if I picked one, all the other 30 talks would be disappointed that I didn't pick theirs too. You know what I'm saying? And it would only apply to such a small part of the audience. So we get a lot of that. The other one that we get a lot of on this.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. It's we get a lot of lessons learned submissions. And
I could have made $5.
Yeah. So we get a lot of people who, I mean, pretty much any conference you go to in a room of developers, so smart. Like you're just surrounded by smart people. And ng-conf is no exception. And the people submitting also not an exception. And at their companies or in their personal projects, they've learned so much. Like they know all these things you don't do. And they made a lot of pitfalls and then they corrected course. And we get a lot of people who are like, hey, this is what we learned building a 500,000 line app. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. It doesn't sound like a bad talk. We get a lot of that. And if we just put that up on stage nonstop, we would never get into the specifics and how to be a total craftsman on the specifics. Like we got some of the talks last year were super, super sharp. So if you're like, hey, I'm going to submit a lessons learned talk, and I've already had like 3 people approach me with their lessons learned ideas. And I'm like, I'm not saying the lessons learned is a bad idea. I'm maybe give it a different title and come at it from a different angle. I'll give you an example. Where I work, we learned some things the hard way. And so we rewrote a bunch of our directives as they're directives that get instantiated through a service. So you make a service, you call service.open thing, and the thing opens, rather than instantiating it through putting it in your template and turning it on with an ng-if or show. So I titled that component as a service, and I submitted that, and I'm going to speak on that at NG Cruise. They picked my talk. That's the idea of taking a lessons learned and talkifying it, getting it ready for a talk. Because lessons learned is probably not going to get picked, but take one of the lessons you learned, turn that into a solid talk, and that's a talk that we could pick.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely ways to take, hey, I've got experience, I've done this sort of thing, and I want to talk about some interesting things that I learned and turning that into a talk, whether that's focusing on one specific thing that you learned, but turning into a how to do this versus here's the things that we learned because, everybody out there has worked with some kind of technology, learned something interesting, and we could have talks like that all day long. Instead, the talks that are, hey, this is an interesting technique that we learned, those types of talks are going to more likely get through.
Yeah, I agree.
So we talked about, keep going, Skip.
I was going to say, I agree completely. Explaining not necessarily what you learned, but explain why it's important.
Yeah. So we've kind of covered some of the basics in the first 15 minutes of this. I think that we should maybe open it up to some specific questions. I feel like we probably answered a lot of questions, but maybe we should take some questions. So I don't know who is in first, so I'm just going to go in order that they appear. So it looks like Rob McDiarmid.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good.
Good, man.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Is there any way I can get a hold of talks that were submitted last year and the ones that were actually picked? I was trying to find the website from last year, but I couldn't find that up anywhere.
2016.ng-conf.org.
Awesome. Perfect. And do you guys have like a favorite talk or favorite title from last year that stood out to you?
Mine was John Papa's because I'm a huge Star Wars fan.
Yeah. So John Papa's influenced the community pretty heavily. So he's someone who everyone wants to hear him talk, but his talk title still really killed it.
Oh yeah.
So Angular 2: The Force Awakens, because the conference was on May the 4th. That was a solid talk title, and he was really thinking it out when he submitted his talk. So, I would definitely recommend looking at those kind of talk titles.
And why? Some reasons why that was great, not just because it was on May the 4th, but his talk was about the basics and the intro to Angular 2, right? It was just here's 20-minute intro to Angular 2. And that whole A Force Awakens sort of, even though it wasn't like a 20-minute intro to Angular 2 would have been a lot more descriptive, but it was a lot more fun, yet it was still implying the right things, right? So there's a clever title that still fits in with what the talk does. Great example of that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. Thanks a lot. I'll hop out into the YouTube. Thanks.
Cool, man. So let's go to the next person, which was Hongbo. Go ahead, man. Hongbo, there you go.
No, I just listen what you are talking about.
Okay.
I just saw.
No worries.
Cool. We have the YouTube is going live right now, and we only have a few available seats in here. So if you could head over to YouTube, it will be better so that more people can fit in here and ask some questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thanks, man. All right, let's go down to Justin, who just disappeared. Greg also disappeared. Ryan Campbell
Disappeared.
also disappeared. Jeff T, front of the line, man. He unmuted.
But we can't hear him.
But we did not hear him. We cannot see him. Oh, we can see him
I
now.
can see you now, but we can't hear you.
No, we cannot hear you. Maybe restart your machine.
Try Firefox. I get this all the time where I can't be heard in Chrome, so I go to Firefox and it works. While Jeff's switching, maybe another question that people might be thinking of that might come up is, should I submit with another person? Right?
That's a
should I
good
try
question.
to do a 2-person talk, or should I talk solo? Like most of the talks that we see are solo. Aaron, how would you answer that?
You want me to go at that one? I think I like group talks. I've seen some really successful ones. I've given some really successful ones. I talked with the guy, Dave Geddes, one of the other organizers, and I feel like we've been successful. So it's not the worst idea. It helps calm your nerves, and you got someone else to help you come up with the material. Yeah, I don't really have a strong opinion whether you should submit with a partner or not. I would definitely say it's not discouraged, but I don't think it's like, oh man, if we submit together, we're going to be more likely picked. That's not true.
Right.
So I don't think it hurts your chances or not, but there's no reason to shy away from it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's mostly a non-issue whether you submit with another person or submit a talk on your own.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I'm heading over to the YouTube. It says, is Faraday able to accommodate more niche talks? Joe Skeen is asking that.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah, good question. Go ahead, Joe. Eames, answer that question. Able to accommodate more niche talks? Joe Skeen is asking that.
Yeah.
Kip.
Yeah.
Eames, why aren't you talking?
Sorry. You want me to field that one?
Yeah, that's why I said
I turned over the YouTube to start reading the comments and had to mute it. All right, so yes.
Come on, Eames.
Totally not paying attention. Sorry, I was thinking of something else. Yes, Faraday can fit more into his talks. So we do 1 and 2 hour workshops on Faraday. We may even do talks on Faraday. Right, our Faraday isn't necessarily set. Right, we have our ideas of what we want to do based on what we did last year, but it's not entirely set. So that does give us the opportunity, because we have at least 3 tracks going on, if not 4 or 5, that we can do more niche talks. So even though that we can do those niche talks, that doesn't necessarily mean that we will jump at a talk that is Angular plus some technology backend, right? Again, those talks tend to blend into the crowd so much that it would have to really be exciting. I mean, and I come from a .NET backend, for example, so I might be leaning towards, hey, a .NET talk, great, right? But what I would be worried about is we put some talk like that up and we only have 5 people show up, because of the 70 people that would have been applied to, the rest are also looking at other talks that apply to them that are more generic. So be careful about your niche talks, but don't necessarily feel like, hey, I can't submit a niche talk, right? A niche talk can totally work. Sometimes a niche talk might go up on the main stage, right? It really just depends on when we look at it and say, is this something that, whether or not everybody's going to do it, whether or not everybody even would potentially do it, would a majority of people be better off if they knew about this and saw something about this? That would be a criteria for main stage.
An example, because Joe just said there's criteria, an example of that, and this is my opinion, and just everyone should know we don't always agree on what's good and bad. Sometimes we have some hefty arguments over talks. But one for me that would like an example is native scripts. Most of us aren't doing anything with native scripts. It's not a thing that we're doing in our jobs or whatever. So it's kind of one of those talks where it's like, yeah, that's not anything that applies to me. But it's also kind of the Angular community's answer environment. So it is a talk that is niche, and we would probably, I think we generally agree that that's a good idea for something for Faraday, or even for the main stage, is a TypeScript types talk. Right. So wait, I said TypeScript. Let me back up. I meant native script.
Native script.
Sorry, I was talking about native script the whole time. I said TypeScript. So yeah, all that I just said, but I'm talking about native script. Right. So yeah, that's the example.
Yeah, but so to get back to that, is what is Faraday different? And he actually kind of clarified, is there anything different we're looking for on Faraday? Faraday, primarily we're looking for workshops, so 1 to 2 hours versus like, we want these to be more hands-on. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to be sitting down, following along, and you're going to be waiting for them to code up, right? But more like, if people wanted to follow along and they ended up, not necessarily having a problem, that they could follow along, or if they rewatch the talk, that they would likely follow along with what you're doing, right? So we want Faraday to be 1 or 2 hour talks that are more hands-on. So that's what we're more looking for Faraday. That doesn't necessarily mean that we might not select some talks and have them be given on Faraday. We did that last year, and we would do it again. We did it with our backup speaker, and we would definitely potentially do that again, because there's so many more talks submitted that are awesome and deserve to be seen than we have time to show on the main stage. So totally. For Faraday, look for something that's, hey, I want to show how to do something. Like, I want to show how to build this particular thing, how to build a modal component, right? That would be a great 1 hour fair day talk workshop.
Yeah.
But also niche talks could potentially show up if we looked at a talk and said, this is just a bit too niche to go on the main stage, but since we're already doing a couple of other talks on fair day, maybe this would be a great one to throw in there, and we'll have this talk as well.
Yeah. So we got another question on YouTube. It's from Justin Gudu. He's saying, for new speakers, do you purely select on topic and description, or would you do more research, like have they done talks before, and are they known in the Angular community? So I'm going to give an example from last year. A guy who I had no idea who he was. His name is Justin Schwarzenberger. I didn't know who he was. When we picked this talk, it wasn't because we knew who he was. It wasn't because, we honestly, none of us knew who he was. And I'd never really heard of him, but his talk title was solid. And he was the only one that submitted on that topic. He was talking about Angular 2's CSS approach. And he was the only one that submitted on that. And that was actually a really solid topic to present on. So we ended up picking Justin almost purely based on his title. So I'm going to say, to answer your question, Gudu, it's a pretty level playing field. You're not going to be picked on because we don't know you. You're going to be considered the same as the people that we do know. And we're really just looking for the best talks, and we don't really care who's submitting them.
Right. Yeah. Knowing the person, are they known in the Angular community, has almost no relevance. We do oftentimes reach out to specific people in the Angular community who are experts on a particular topic and say, hey, we want a talk about your topic at ng-conf. Right. And that's going to be one reason why you're going to see similar people that have showed up between years. But whether we know them or not really matters less. If you're brand new and you've never spoken ng-conf before, if you can link to other talks you've given, that's nice for us, because if we look at a talk title and a description and it looks awesome, then the next step would be, all right, we've never seen this person talk. Have they given a talk before? And can we watch that and see were they smooth enough? Were they comfortable enough on the stage? Were they able to deliver the talk? We're not going to look at that and say, was it an amazing talk or not? But instead, were they capable of giving a reasonable presentation? On top of that, we have a trainer that we hire that we let people work with. So for people that haven't spoken before, then that would be something that we would really encourage that you do, is make sure to work with the trainer so that it helps us feel more comfortable that if you're an unknown quantity as far as your presentation skills, that you've worked with the trainer, and we know that you've gotten a lot of the basics of, gone through at least her basics for what's it like to present.
So, Eames, I know we got that. Was it Igor or was it Naomi that recommended we do that?
I can't remember.
It was someone at Google said, we want you to give speaker coaches to the speakers who want it. So that is one thing you should know, is we have a paid professional speaker coach that can coach you once you've got your talk mostly ready to present.
And it's all free to you up to a certain point. Yeah, we cover the costs of the first bit.
Yeah. And we cover a cost where you get it basically for free, unless you want extensive feedback. Then you can go ahead and keep going with that person. But we make sure everyone gets enough time to so.
And another thing that we do to make ourselves comfortable with people that we haven't seen before, and they haven't necessarily spoken a lot, is we have a bunch of requirements for the speakers that they have to finish their talk by a certain time. They have to give their talk a certain number of times. They have to record it once. They have to give it to somebody else. And for new speakers, we'll be really strict about that sort of thing, right? You need to go and give your talk at a meetup or a couple of meetups beforehand and get it recorded, even if it's just on a cell phone once, then have it peer reviewed by another speaker that we assign to you. So those things matter and are really important. But whether you've spoken or not is not really important at all. We're just looking for awesome looking talks.
Yeah. So
sorry, go ahead.
No, I just was going to say, to sort of summarize for that guy, just the fact that you're new, in my opinion, doesn't really have any bearing. We've picked lots of new people we've never heard of. Shai Resnick, lots of people that there weren't names that people knew, and now I'm some of their biggest fans because they absolutely killed it. So we're not going to penalize you for being new. It's not good or bad. We just want the best talks. So that's the answer.
Before we get to Jeff's question, there's one other topic I wanted to cover, and that is a little bit more about topic. One of the things that people should realize when they're submitting is a lot of talks get submitted where the same topic gets submitted 5-6 times, right, or more, right? And I can't think of an example from last year, but then we end up with some holes where it's obvious like nobody submitted a talk about something. So last year it was pipes. Nobody submitted a talk to talk about pipes. And everybody submitted a talk. Like I can guarantee this year we're going to have a minimum of 10 submissions about migrating from Angular 1 to 2, right?
At least.
At least 10 submissions.
It's a really important topic. So a lot of people are gonna submit on it.
Yep. So the competition there is going to be tight. But if you look at the whole scope of Angular 2, and regardless of even looking at outside of it, like what is it, Angular 2 plus Relay or Angular 2 plus Rails, right? Looking just within it, what are the pieces of Angular 2 that you could talk about that might be a very interesting talk that might lead you to submit a talk on a topic that nobody else has submitted on. So it's far more likely that your talk will be rejected, not because it wasn't a great talk, but because other people submitted and now you're in tight competition. We have to choose one of 5 or one of 10 instead of one of 1 or one of 2, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened with Schwarzenberger last year, right? Mm-hmm. He was the only one to submit on that topic. We all agreed this is going to shape the way Angular 2 is written, so we definitely want this talk on the stage. And there was a lot less competition versus some of the other topics. So also think about that. Like and we've done that in the past. Like Kent C. Dodds a few years ago gave a talk about model options, was it?
Yeah.
And we gave him a 5-minute talk. No one else submitted on that.
Yeah.
So we're like, yeah, that's an important thing to talk about. It's a 5-minute submission. Of course, we're going to pick that. So, don't shy away from something because it's too small. We do have smaller talks, and you're going to have less competition. So we want to talk on everything.
Jen Looper commented and said, "This year every talk will be pipes."
Awesome.
That's awesome. All right. So let's get to is it Jeff? Jeff's question.
Jeff is the dude in the thing with us.
Yeah.
Jeff T. We cannot hear you anymore.
Oh, still cannot hear you. Oh no.
Why don't you type it?
Can you type it?
Dude, he can type. He looks
Record
like
yourself on your cell phone. Upload it to YouTube.
Question: what if we get selected and our corporate legal doesn't approve our talk? How mad would you be if we had to back out? That's one question that no one's ever asked before.
I think that would be fine, right? Like it would be a problem if 5 of our speakers backed out. It wouldn't be a problem if 1 of our speakers backed out. We always have at least 1 backup, and we can go back to the talk submissions, and we always have like, oh my gosh, here's the 10 that we wish we had 10 more time slots for, right? And so we can always go back to those and say, hey, we changed, some slot opened up. Would you please come back and
But we fly in a backup speaker just in case. Like this year we had Alyssa Nickel, and she was ready at any moment to give a talk.
And possibly our biggest mistake was not putting her on the main stage.
Yeah, because she's awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're, if that's a thing for you, think about it, but don't let it prevent you from submitting. Okay. The next question Jeff had was, I thought I had an idea for a talk, but after listening to you, it might not be a fair day thing.
It might be a more fair day thing.
Oh, it might be a more fair day thing. If my talk is submitted for a talk and is more of a fair day topic, do I apply twice? Do you suggest that I reapply as a different type of talk? I would
submit it twice.
to make it easier for us. I'd submit it another time.
Yeah. We're not necessarily looking at talks and thinking this would make a good fair day workshop. We'll only do that if we don't get enough fair day workshop submissions. But last year we had plenty. I assume we'll get plenty this year. So
yeah, and I mean, again, I hate to cop out, be like that we suck at life or something, but going through this many talk submissions is tough, and so you're just trying to plow through and make sure you filter out the best possible ones to the top. And so if you got something miscategorized, we might just look at it and go, no, that's not a good topic for this stage. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, definitely resubmit it with the other thing.
Did you say you played Dungeons and Dragons with Alyssa Nicole? Seriously? If that's true, I'm completely jealous. Oh my gosh.
That sounds like fun.
Like I want to play D&D with Alyssa. Alyssa actually had a sort of a question here on the YouTube channel. So she says, is the answer submit talks on every possible topic then, so that you might hit on a topic that doesn't get covered?
If we say yes to that, then we're basically going to double the submissions. So I'm partly inclined to say no, but I mean, the answer obviously is yes.
Yeah, don't be spammy, right? If we see that the same person has submitted 10 of, on 2 ideas, right? That will get pretty annoying. We might reject you just because we're super annoyed with you.
Yeah.
That could happen.
Yeah.
But submitting
you
a
might
handful.
fill a niche too. You might fill a niche.
Yeah. Submit